There's a lot of mental work that goes into fitting in, and it's really not at all easy. Hi Neurospices, welcome back to Late Diagnosed. Today I want to talk about how neurodivergence work in the workplace. I've spoken before about unravelling all of the masking, and in doing so I'm finding out a lot about myself. So I understand where in some aspects I have masked and what that looks like, but there are things from day to day that I'm uncovering that I didn't really understand prior. And you might find the same thing too if this content relates to you, or perhaps maybe it relates to someone that you know. And it's really, really hard to fully understand it without delving a little bit deeper. In delving a little bit deeper, some things can get a little bit painful, because when you look back on your life and you look back on the way that you've always done things, the way that you've compensated for the world around you so that you could play in a neurotypical world, there's a really hard aspect of that where you come to understand that a lot of your life has cost you dearly. What I'm really referring to more than anything is people's understanding of you. So, I mean, your own understanding of you is a whole other thing. But other people's understanding of you, and by other people I mean neurotypicals, where you've had diagnoses in the past of anxiety and depression, and a lot of women are diagnosed with that who actually find out later, like myself, that the diagnosis is actually ADHD and autism, or just ADHD or just autism, but quite often they co-occur. And in finding that out about you, some of it is acknowledging the traumas that you've been through to fit in, acknowledging the ways that you've had to measure up to cope, acknowledging the cost mentally in order to fit. And I was sharing with a friend today so many different aspects of it, and really understanding a little bit more about how it has actually affected me. The reality is that I have been masking and without really realising what I've been doing. So to outline a little bit easier, my life has been one of observance. So I have observed the world around me. I have observed what works and what doesn't. And I have applied that to how I react and respond in a variety of different ways. So I would look at relationships, for example, and see how they work. A different dynamic of relationships, not just like romantic relationships, but friendships, kids and their parents, siblings, friends, workmates, all of those kinds of things are things that I've observed over the years. And I've actually taken physical notes, but also mental notes on how that all works. And in a neurospicy brain, what we do is we make kind of like little folders inside our head so that we can store away that information and draw on it later. The things that become very, very problematic for us is when the rules change. So then we now have to apply this new set of rules, and that's not necessarily easy if you don't like change. And then you kind of got to find your way again and rewrite the rules effectively. And that can become really, really hard to do too. So there's a lot of mental work that goes into fitting in. And it's really not at all easy. but you know, it's what we've got to do. And one thing that I guess I really want to achieve by sharing all of this is an understanding from those in my world and those in your world who aren't neurospicy, neurodivergent, what the toll is for us in order to fit in. So I explained in my last video how, you know, we do things to make other people around us feel comfortable. So we will say things, we will do things, we will react and respond in a particular way that we already know because of the research that we've done, that makes them feel comfortable. So even now, as I'm unmasking, I'm still finding, and I guess that's to be expected, I'm still finding that I will go almost into autopilot and apologize for myself or explain more so that I don't have to face that whole misunderstanding thing, which has just occurred so many times over my life. I can't even tell you how many times, and just becomes such a pressure point in my life. It's really, really, it's a continual process to unmask, and I think it's going to be worth it. I guess the balance that I've got to find is how much of that is going to be accepted at work. So given that I've only just recently had my diagnosis, I was already working in a job and have had a fairly long career in a similar field, that I have been finding it difficult with and not really understanding why. So in my previous video, I talked about how I work part-time. So I work 4 days a week, and I do compressed hours. So I do almost full-time, but over 4 days. And I do that. The initial reason why I stepped back to 4 days a week was because I was overwhelmed, because the amount of work that I had to get through was too much and I couldn't do it. So the only way I knew how to manage that was to step back. And, you know, it was a financial step back too, which wasn't easy to manage, but I decided that my mental health was far more important than, you know, what my earnings were at the time. The plan was that I would work on my creative things on my day off. So the 1 day a week, which was after an office day, I would paint, I would draw, I would make things, I would be creative in all the ways that I love to be creative. But as I explained previously, wasn't able to do that because of working in the office and what that presented to me. And I'm understanding a lot more now than I did then about why that's been problematic, not just because of the noise, not just because of the constant disruptions in the open plan office, which, by the way, does not work for neurodivergent people. It's been proven that it doesn't work, full stop, for productivity. So why are we still doing that, honestly? Anyway, that's my little rant. So having now understood that, and now I have my flexible work arrangement and I work from home for those 4 days a week, that has been super, super helpful. But the workload is still huge and it's very, very difficult for me to manage, only because the way that my work is, there are still constant disruptions and a lot of changing between things. So we call those transitions. And someone neurotypical can transition between X and Y quite quickly, interchangeably. Think about it, you know, the tabs open on your computer and you swap from one to the next, and that's okay, because then you'll just come back to that one that you were working on and then you'll finish that off. Well, for someone who's neurodivergent, what I need to do is work on that one thing until it's done, and then I can move on. But when I do it that way, I am way more productive than somebody else, because I can hyper focus on that and get to the end of it far quicker, you know, just do way more work in that same period of time. But you introduce transitions or disruptions or needing to move on to something else because someone has come in and said to me, hey, I need this done right now, drop what you're doing and do it. that transition for someone neurotypical is quick. For me, it absolutely is not. So not only do I have to change out of where I am mentally in processing what I am doing, but then I have to change tack, access a different part of my brain to move into the next thing, and then be able to drill down enough to get into hyperfocus for that. And then hopefully I don't forget what I was already working on. So the way that I'm managing that currently, I'm just basically creating notes everywhere. So OneNote is my friend, but it's not perfect because I'm certainly not perfect. But those transitions cost a lot of time. And so in my job, that's really, really hard. And even though I work from home and I've decreased the amount of distractions and I've decreased the amount of external input, which is the noise, the lighting, the people around me, the music, the people walking past and having chit chats, all of that's reduced and that's fine. But there is still competing information with the work that I do. And so that's still really difficult. And I guess what I've been trying to do is understand how much masking I might need to continue in order to get my job done, and how much is safe to unmask. Because currently, management have yet to really understand how a neurodivergent works in that kind of environment, and what supports need to be in place and why, and then supporting that. Because if they were to support someone who just works differently, the output in productivity is far greater than they would ever expect. So it's all a bit of a learning curve, massive learning curve for me. And I'm working it out. You know, it's not the easiest of tasks, but you know, I'm here for it because someone said to me that, you know, perhaps I'm some form of pioneer in my office, which of course I don't want to be, but if I pave the way now, if I stand up and advocate for myself now, then someone else coming up behind me in a year's time who is currently undiagnosed, who is currently experiencing the same issues that I've had, who is currently feeling so burnt out. If I advocate now and I am able to get in place a really great working relationship and from management's perspective, a great understanding of neurodivergence in the workplace and therefore the appropriate supports, then that person doesn't have to fight and fight just to be understood. And that's a big win. That's where I'm at.